Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there, having yourselves a great start to your day, great start to your weekend. Here to talk a little bit of weather this morning and try to break down what's going to happen weather-wise specifically for today. We'll break down each region and try to figure it out for you folks. And then towards the end of the video, stay tuned. I think around this time next week, so about a week out from today, we could be dealing with some kind of significant storm system across the eastern U.S. Now, I think most people in the winter, when they think of significant storm system, their mind immediately goes to a major winter storm or snowstorm. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. Could it go to that? There's a chance, but this could be significant as far as rain, snow for some areas. But there's a lot to figure out, and we're going to figure it out as we get closer day by day, as we always do with weather. But we're going to talk about what we know. What's kind of driving all these things that could come together to make this or that, whether it's rain, snow, strong winds, severe weather. We're going to break it all down for you guys because there's a lot of factors, a 50-50 low, how that helps high pressure and where it's anchored, what that does to our actual main driver, which is our low pressure in the lower 48. A lot to figure out. We'll talk a little bit on it here at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But stay tuned for tonight. I'm not going to leave you folks hanging like I did last night, and we're going to get very detailed. I have you a great video tonight, and I'll try to be ready to explain things in a way that you guys as the audience can certainly understand. But if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It's been a pretty decent start to January considering the fact we haven't really had anything crazy to talk about besides a severe weather threat. So I really appreciate the continued views that we've been getting on this channel. It really means a lot and just adding to the family. It's been just steady growth. It's not explosive growth like we saw back in late December with the Arctic front, but it's been steady. So I really appreciate it, and thank y'all for supporting me in what I do here. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and others can too. So let's get rolling. Watches and warnings. You know, most of the country, you're just chilling. There's not a whole lot going on. We dealt with a little bit of snow in southern New England yesterday. I didn't really see any big totals. I didn't even see any totals any higher than 2 or 3 inches. So I think that it just did not snow heavy enough in a lot of areas. I think I saw just a lot of 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch to 2 inch totals, but it definitely wasn't a big winter weather event. For certain areas, it definitely reminded you guys that it is still winter because we're at January 6th and 7th, and winter really hasn't done much. It really hasn't for a lot of these areas in the eastern U.S., except for the crazy Arctic air mass we got around Christmas time a couple weeks ago. But all the watches and warnings and advisories, things like that, and weather alerts in general are all out west. We got wind advisories, high wind warnings, we got high surf advisories, we got winter storm warnings, flash flood watches. We got a lot of things under and overlapping areas out here. So it's very active. We'll talk a little bit on that, but as always, on this channel, I don't get super detailed out west just because if you're high up, it snows in most of these cases in the winter. If you're in the valleys, it rains, but there's always so many microclimates and many details that work into that. So it's not always that simple. But let's start looking at this, and we don't have much of a flow across the eastern U.S. Definitely not an amplified pattern, that's for sure. But we're going to have a little piece of energy that begins to really get going in areas of Kansas and Missouri a little bit later this evening. This could bring a little bit of snow for cities like St. Louis, and then some snow could fly around throughout the overnight hours into the Ohio Valley. But man, not expecting much at all. At most, maybe somebody who likes winter weather would consider themselves lucky if they got an inch of snow. That's for sure. But as you can tell, your eyes immediately go to the West Coast, and I know I don't talk the West Coast much, but these systems that enter the West Coast, they eventually affect the eastern U.S. sometimes, most of the time. So a lot of moisture continues to funnel into California, Oregon, and Washington State, that's for sure. So let's break it down region to region. The southeast, you got some rain falling in areas of the Mississippi Valley, Quad State regions this morning. Rain overspreading western Kentucky, western Tennessee, areas of northeast Arkansas, southeast Missouri. This will continue. It'll be kind of a soggy morning across Nashville, maybe even Memphis also. Some rain will try to make it into the Huntsville, Alabama area around lunchtime today, or be very close by at least. And then some rain starts to move into some of the higher elevations of northern Georgia, southwest North Carolina, and areas of southern and southeast areas of Tennessee. And then they will try to make it all the way into maybe the Piedmont, North Carolina, upstate of South Carolina, but not a big deal. Just some shower activity. It'll be very warm across this area right here. And guys, I'm going to work on getting a cursor so I can circle different things here in the future. It's pretty simple. All I have to do is download an app. It's free. I just need to do it. That's the thing. But I will. I know that'll help people when I'm circling different areas, but hopefully when I do this, it helps enough. But as we're getting into the late afternoon, evening hours, some rain, some showers, just spotty showers, some drizzle for northern Louisiana, northern Mississippi, and then it just continues for Mississippi and things like that. And then maybe as we get into the overnight hours, guys, I'm talking about after midnight, maybe some storm development gets going in areas of Louisiana, Mississippi, but I think this remains below severe limits. Don't worry if you're sleeping overnight and you're worried about storms. Yeah, you could get a flash of lightning, rumble of thunder as we're getting into about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning tonight, into tomorrow morning. But, I don't think this is going to be a big time severe weather event or anything like that. So looking into the northeast, spotty snow showers with lake enhanced moisture going off in northeast Ohio this morning, areas of Pennsylvania and western New York State. Not a big deal. These will try to make its way as far east as Binghamton, maybe even some of the valley regions or higher elevations of further southeast in New York State. Maybe Scranton gets a rain or snow shower a little bit later today. It's a later morning, early afternoon hours, but not a big deal. These rain showers, it'll be warm enough for southern New England, and we're starting to get into mid-January just for rain. So just spotty rain showers for southern New England. Just kind of a cold, dreary day. And it might not be cloudy the entire day in this region, but it's definitely just spotty moisture for the northeast. Moving into the south central U.S., a little bit more active than what we've seen as we're going into the morning hours. Like I said, some precipitation will begin to develop. Columbia, Missouri, for example, maybe a rain-snow mix. Might get a burst of snow. Might be enough to maybe coat some surfaces, but I don't think it's going to be a lot. St. Louis, I think that you guys a little bit later this afternoon, this evening, goes from maybe a rain-snow mix to maybe just a burst of maybe moderate snow or something like that. But like I said, I don't think this is going to be a huge deal at all. I really don't. And we'll zone in on this area here in a second, so bear with me. But like I said, some rain showers and storms down here in the southern and southeast areas of Texas a little bit later tonight into the overnight hours. And so you might hear some rumbles of thunder around College Station, down near to Houston, Austin, Texas. Certainly possible to see some shower and thunderstorm activity into the wee hours of the morning, tomorrow morning, or technically tomorrow. So the north central U.S., not very active besides this little piece of energy to the south. Not a whole lot going on to the northern areas. It'll be a very cold day up here today into the Dakotas and Minnesota, that's for sure. Highs well below freezing, which is pretty typical for this time of the year. But you see this energy right here. We're going to go on and zoom into this area. Like I said, this is kind of right now. And then as we're getting into about 12 p.m., 1 p.m., look at this spotty moisture developing and just enough cold air right into here in central to northern sections of Missouri, where this will fall as maybe some sleet and some snow. And like I said, as we're getting into around 6 p.m., around dinner time tonight, this will get very close to the St. Louis area, and there could be a burst of snow a little bit later for St. Louis into the evening hours, and this will try to make its way into south central Illinois into the overnight hours. And then the system begins to lose a good bit of its moisture as we're starting to get into sunrise tomorrow. But I think we're still left with some lingering snow flurries and snow showers as we're waking up tomorrow morning across areas of the Ohio Valley, even into Ohio, which I don't have really shown here. Like I said, I think that, some of this could make its way. Let's get this going here. I think some of this will make its way eventually into Ohio, but like I said, just some snow flurries flying around as you're waking up tomorrow. Not a big deal. And in fact, as far as snowfall totals for this event, a dusting at most, maybe a coating, maybe a half inch. Maybe somebody, if you're a winter weather fan, might get lucky and see an inch of snow in these areas right here in Missouri and western Illinois. But consider yourself very lucky if you see an inch of snow out of this system. The western U.S., listen, systems just keep kind of funneling into this area. Low pressures will develop, then they kind of whiplash moisture into the western coastline. With it, high winds, coastal flooding, coastal erosion. If you got any real estate along the immediate beach areas of Oregon, Northern California, heck, even Southern California, just due to the fact that you are getting high surf whipped up as far south as Southern Cal, it's certainly at a risk just for coastal flooding. But, I don't pretend like I know every geographical region along the areas up and down on the western coastline. So, it just depends on how high you sit up, things like that. But most people know that. But this will continue. We're getting into the afternoon hours. More rain continues, and I think the epicenter of this will certainly be Northern California again, like it was yesterday. And, heavy mountain snow, 7,000 feet of snow and higher. And if you're in the valleys and lower elevations, just heavy rain with strong winds going throughout the overnight hours. This is getting into the overnight hours, late evening overnight hours. And then just this continues, just heavy rain, especially tonight, guys. And this starts to ooze back south into the San Francisco area and south of San Francisco. This is a lot of rain between now and the next 24 hours. Spots even into going a little bit further south down the central coastline of California, it starts to see several inches of rain. But if you're in Northern Cal, widespread, several inches of rainfall totals in this area. 2, 3, 4, 5 inches of rain. Just stay tuned to your local forecast up here. That's the best thing I can tell you. But of course, you're going to get heavy California mountain snow out here. Heavy snow, feet of snow, even in the next 24 hours. Temperatures, the eastern U.S., central U.S., it's going to get pretty warm across. It'll be a nice day, even though you'll be dealing with a little bit of moisture, meaning rain falling from the sky. Southeast Texas, areas in Texas today will hit 80 degrees. Louisiana, the entire state will get into the 70s probably. And even central to southern Arkansas, 60s to 70s. Mississippi, most of the state, unless you start to get closer to the Tennessee state line, most of the state sees 60s, even 70s today. Same with about 2/3 of Alabama, the southern 2/3 of Alabama, 60s and 70s. Florida, a little bit cooler today, 60s and 70s for highs, but still nice. And then you start to get into the Carolinas, a little bit cooler with some cloud cover that begins to move in that keeps temperatures from rising too high. And then the Mid-South, Ohio Valley, a little bit cooler. Typical January kind of conditions up here in the north central U.S. where you're very, very cold. And then just a chilly day across the Northeast. Nothing too crazy compared to one way or the other on average. So let's talk about our system next week. I'm not going to get very detailed in this video, but I'm going to give you the gist of it, right? And what we kind of know. So this system that you see right here, this on the screen right now, this is a system that we need to watch, and we'll talk a little bit on this tonight. This could bring a little bit of frozen precipitation for northern VA, areas of West Virginia, Maryland, maybe a little bit of frozen precipitation for Washington, D.C. Maybe you get a dusting in Washington, D.C. We'll talk about that tonight. And we'll keep this going, and I think there's going to be a period of frozen precipitation in areas of Pennsylvania, some snow, maybe a light snowfall event. Might even sink as far south as the I-95 corridor, northern New Jersey, New York City. It doesn't quite really make it based off the latest Euro all the way up to Boston. But I'm showing you this because this is a driver on our significant system that comes in later in the week. It's part of it, but it's not the main driver. It's just a piece. Here we go. So let's keep this rolling. I don't want to talk too much on that. So this moves through. And then what happens here is another low pressure develops here about midweek. It's right here. You see this big plume of moisture, and this is really that low pressure that we needed to connect with this up here, right? But the Euro has trended this low pressure down here to just be further south. So it's not even going to interact with this little northern stream of energy that's dropping down the southeast Canada and then eventually into the northeast. So they don't even come close at this point. That was going to create our 50-50 low scenario over like Nova Scotia or Newfoundland that we need to anchor in our high pressure, which is our main source, our main feed of cold air. So in that case, you got a fleeting high pressure. It's way up north in Canada. So low pressure begins to cut. We don't have a great source of cold air. And then we were left with this big blob of rain. It's like a raging rainstorm for all of the eastern U.S. And eventually, and I'm sorry about not mentioning the time frame, we're getting into Friday, next Friday at this point, January the 13th. So this would be for Friday evening. Eventually you get enough cold air that wraps back in behind this, and there's two sources of cold air, and we'll talk on this tonight in a lot more detail. One is the anchored high pressure ahead of the moisture, and you really need that if you want the main system to deliver any frozen precipitation for your area, if that's what you want. But then there's another source of cold air, but it comes in after all this moisture heads on out, and here it comes. And this is kind of what low pressures do. They kind of bring in almost like a trough, or it is a trough, that brings in kind of an area of cold air. It's not a lot of cold air in this case, but it's enough for mid-January standards to create backside snow. So in this case, the European would kick up a pretty significant what we call northwest flow event. And it's basically when you just have cold air that funnels in, and it creates a lot of snow for the mountains, sometimes as far south as North Georgia. But really, Tennessee, the northwest facing slopes really get hammered with this, in the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, even areas of eastern Kentucky sometimes, West Virginia get sometimes an epic northwest flow event. So what I would say is, if you got a mountain trip planned for next weekend, you might be in luck. Everybody else and their brother might see nothing but rain, but the mountains might see snow. And even as this low pressure moves on off, it's still snowing like crazy in the mountains. And then it heads off, but there's still wild cards with this, right? So like a secondary low pressure develops as we're getting into the end of next weekend, which is in kind of la-la world out there. It's way out there, and still tries to deliver more rain. So it's all over the place. But guys, in the grand scheme of things, and here I am, told you I'm not going to get very detailed on it in this video, and here I am getting very detailed. The grand scheme of things is we don't have a real true cold air source ahead of this main event. And here it is. This is our system that we'll talk about tonight, that will start to begin as early as later tomorrow. Could deliver some snow. Enjoy it, because we've been deprived of snow for the eastern U.S. so far this year for the most part, especially the mid-Atlantic points south. And then we watch this low pressure right here, which on the GFS is a little bit further north now. The GFS was the one that was wanting it really far south. So it's very close. This is a low pressure developing, and you see this blue up here? This is a piece of energy trying to phase with this, and you need this to phase somewhere right in here. I mean, it would obviously be ideal for winter weather fans if it phased right here. That means you would probably get a snowstorm just off this event. But they do not phase. They do not come together, and eventually, if they do, it's just too far away. And then that happens. So our main source of cold air is there, but the GFS is a little bit different. It has basically a strong enough anchored high pressure still funneling in shallow cold air at the surface. So basically you have a fleeting high pressure, it's still funneling in some cold air, but you lose the cold air aloft. It's just basically lingering, stagnant cold air at the surface. So what I'm meaning is, it could be 30, 31 degrees at the surface, but aloft it's well above 32 degrees. So it's raining, but you might have a thin layer at the surface, literally where we stand as humans, at the surface where it's 30, 31 degrees. So massive area of warm air aloft due to just a fleeting high pressure that doesn't really have any true cold air aloft. When I say aloft, I mean well above our heads. But as it falls to the surface, you still got enough cold air trapped. Cold air damming is what we call it. 30, 31 degrees, so it falls in freezing rain. And this is kind of what happens here. On the latest GFS, literally the one that just ran this morning, it's much colder. All of a sudden, for this coming Friday morning, shows a significant ice storm for areas of the foothills and areas of the Piedmont, North Carolina. And then it gets into, the foothills and mountains of Virginia. Significant winter weather event kicking off next Friday morning. And that's because the high pressure up here is funneling in just enough cold air at the surface where it's just a wintry mess at the surface of just sleet, freezing rain, and maybe some snow, depending on how entrenched the cold air mass is above our heads. It's so important, guys. That's why I always tell you folks, it's so much more important than just telling you if it's going to freezing rain, sleet, or snow. But in general, the GFS is much more of a significant system than the Euro as far as winter weather. It shows, a pretty significant winter weather event for areas of Michigan. It shows us all starting out as winter weather for Pennsylvania, New York State, and has a lot of ice lingering around. It starts Friday morning, and it's still Friday afternoon. Now, remember, guys, it's not a forecast. It's absolutely not a forecast. I'm telling you these scenarios, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to really break down why. That's what we do. We break down why this one model might show a lot of wintry weather and why it's showing it. And we're going to break down why this other model is a warmer solution and kind of what factors are going into showing that. So, we're getting into this weekend, and then, it shows a more substantial winter weather event for Friday into Saturday, just in general. A low pressure riding in, enough cold air on top, and this would be a hit for the interior areas of Northeast rather than what the Euro shows, which is just a raging rainstorm for just about everybody. And then look at this northwest flow event. Look at this wraparound moisture. You got enough cold air behind this to really dump a lot of snow for areas, for basically the southern Appalachian Mountains here. So this is an interesting event. Then you have another secondary low that forms and enough cold air wrapping in. And at this point, we're getting pretty far out. But there's some crazy scenarios still showing up. And I think that next weekend, we're going to be dealing with a pretty long-lasting, pretty significant storm system for a lot of people. So I'll quickly show you this, and I did not expect this to go 20 minutes long, but I'll quickly show you this and really what's driving it. So the red you see is high pressure. The blues you see is low pressure. Just think of it as that. So what happens here is that main system that I was just telling you that really we need to connect really doesn't connect. So it doesn't even come close. So, if we look at the EPS ensemble, it has this low pressure way over here now. Okay, so we have nothing anchoring in any kind of low pressure. It doesn't even come close to phasing with any kind of energy up here. So what happens is this was our 50-50 low. It's no longer there anymore. It's not even close. So basically you have high pressure scooting out to the east. You still got high pressure, right? But you need this high pressure back over here to, one, suppress the storm track down here for winter weather. And then two, you need the high pressure right here to supply and funnel in that cold air ahead of this low pressure. So you have cold air in place, and you have cold air, and you have moisture overriding this cold air, if that makes any sense. And for example, you look at this low pressure location for the latest EPS ensemble, the European ensemble, and you back it up, say, 4 or 5 runs, or 3 or 4 runs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just keep going. So we'll go all the way back to, I think this was the crazy run a couple days ago. So look at the high pressure, right? Look at the 50-50 low, really close to areas of Newfoundland, things like that. It's a nice, decent 50-50 low location. What this is doing is anchoring in this high pressure right here. It's kind of stuck here. It's not a very strong high pressure, but really the placement of it's pretty decent. So you're getting a nice funnel of cold air, a feed of cold air ahead of the system. This is our low pressure right here, creating a lot of moisture. And, the rest is history. So we'll talk more on this tonight, and I'll be able to try to explain a lot better for you folks. But there's a lot of factors going into this. We just need that high pressure anchored if you're a winter weather fan. But I can tell you, normally in this range, once this trends to rain, it's hard to make it trend back. And there's been a pretty substantial trend that we lose any kind of 50-50 low pressure right here. And, it's way out here in the middle of the North Atlantic. And, if you back it up a couple runs, like I said, it was, right. This was the big run. It was right here several runs ago. Not several, honestly, just a few runs ago. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'll have you an update this evening, and I'll try to do a little bit better at trying to explain this the best possible way for you folks. God bless all y'all. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.